The entire palace froze when a royal guard heard 6 words no child should ever hear whispered in a dark corridor. 1 sentence. 1 threat. And a guard who did not wait for orders stepped between power and a terrified princess. What happened next? Exposed silence, shattered authority, and proved protection does not need permission. This story starts with a whisper and ends with truth. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and watch till the end. The royal preservation wing of Ashburn Castle existed in a silence deeper than most places dared to hold. Even sounds seemed to obey rules here. Footsteps softened before crossing the threshold. Voices lowered without instruction. The air stayed cooler than the rest of the palace, carefully controlled to protect history stitched in silk and velvet. Rows of archival cabinets stretched down the narrow aisles, each one sealed, labeled. Guarded by decades of caution, Sergeant Rowan Halberg stood at his post near the entrance. His scarlet tunic caught the filtered light. Muted beneath protective glass panels overhead, the tall bearskin hat cast a long shadow along the marble seam beneath his boots. He did not shift. He did not fidget. 15 years in royal service had trained him to exist without his presence while noticing everything. The low mechanical hum of preservation units vibrated constantly, steady and precise. The scent of cedar, linen, and cold metal lingered in the air. This wing did not forgive mistakes. Princess Alara entered with a preservation specialist at her side. She carried a folded ceremonial fabric sample pressed tightly against her chest. Hands wrapped around it as though it might disappear if loosened. The specialist nodded politely toward Rowan and guided the princess forward. Deeper into the wing where children's ceremonial attire was stored, Rowan noticed the change in her pace. Before anyone else did, her steps slowed slightly after the first row of cabinets. Not enough to draw attention. Enough to register. Her shoulders tightened. Her chin dipped lower. She glanced back once, then again. Subtle movements. Masked by courtesy, she was not looking at the garments. She was checking the doorway. Rowan did not turn his head. He tracked her line of sight through peripheral awareness, a habit earned in places far louder than this one. Her breathing shifted, shallow, controlled. The kind of breathing learned, not natural. The specialist continued speaking softly about fabric preservation, unaware. Then another figure entered the wing. Lord Merrick Vale moved without announcement, steps confident, expression relaxed. He belonged here by permission, not by duty. He smiled briefly toward the specialist, who stepped aside instinctively, creating space without being asked. Princess Alara froze, not visibly, not dramatically. Her body stiffened in a way children learned when stillness felt safer than movement. The folded fabric trembled slightly in her hands. Rowan felt the instinct in his spine awaken. Marek spoke quietly, his voice barely rising above the hum of the machines. "Stay here," he said to the specialist. "I will handle this." The specialist hesitated, then nodded. Retreating a few steps down the aisle, Marek moved closer to the princess, guiding her between 2 tall archival cabinets where the aisle narrowed and light dimmed. Rowan remained still, 3 steps away. Princess Elara's shoulders pressed back against the cabinet edge. Cold metal met fabric. Her eyes fixed on a point just past Rowan, unfocused, distant. Marek leaned in. His voice stayed low, calm, controlled. "It will not hurt," he said. "If you stay quiet." The sentence landed. Rowan did not think. He moved. 1 step closed the distance. Then another. His body slid between the princess and Marek with controlled force, not aggressive, not hesitant, protective, final. "Step back," Rowan said. Marek stiffened, surprise flashing across his face. "This does not concern you," Marek replied. Rowan did not raise his voice. "It concerns me now," he said. Princess Alara's breath broke. A sound escaped her chest. Small, unplanned. Her fingers clenched around the fabric sample until the folds collapsed. Marek laughed softly. "You misunderstand," he said. "You are overstepping." Rowan turned his head slightly, just enough to see the princess clearly. Her eyes had filled, Not with tears yet. With effort, with restraint, with the exhaustion of someone who had learned that silence was survival, Princess Rowan said calmly, "You do not need to stay quiet." Her knees weakened. Rowan shifted instantly. Grounding his stance, one arm angled protectively, without touching her face or hands. He positioned himself so that every camera line, every open sight path, pointed to him instead of her. Marek's expression hardened. "You forget your role," said. Rowan met his gaze. "My role is protection," he replied, "and it does not wait for permission." Footsteps echoed from the far end of the wing. Staff had heard raised voices. Heads began to turn. The silence of the preservation wing fractured. Marek stepped forward again. Rowan did not retreat. "You will leave," Rowan said. Now Princess Alara's voice finally emerged. Small, but clear. He said it before. She whispered. The words carried farther than shouting ever could. Rowan felt the space shift around them. "Control," Rowan said into his collar communicator. Voice steady. "Safeguarding protocol. Immediate response required in the preservation wing." The reply came without delay. "Confirmed." Marek's confidence cracked. "This is unnecessary." He snapped. Rowan did not look away. "No," he said. What happened before was unnecessary. Princess Alara pressed closer behind him, not hiding, choosing position. Her grip found the edge of his sleeve. Light, certain. The preservation wing, built to protect history, had just witnessed a moment that would change it. Whisper had crossed a line, and a guard had moved without being told. The silence of the Royal Preservation Wing did not survive the moment. Rowan Helberg stepped forward. Sound returned in fragments. A sharp intake of breath. The soft scrape of shoes against marble. The distant click of a cabinet sensor reacting to sudden movement. What had once been a sealed world of controlled quiet now carried tension that refused to stay contained. Lord Marek, veil straightened. His confidence bruised, but not gone. "You are creating a scene," he said, lowering his voice further. As if volume alone determined authority, Rowan did not move aside. "I am ending one," he replied. Princess Alara stood just behind him, her small frame partly hidden by his broad shoulders. She did not cling. She stood upright, one hand still resting on the folded fabric sample, the other hovering near Rowan's sleeve as though testing whether safety could truly exist. Footsteps approached from the far aisle. The preservation specialist returned first. Face pale, eyes darting between Rowan and Marek. Two archivists followed, drawn by raised voices where none belonged. Their presence widened the moment, stretching it beyond private denial. "This area is restricted," the specialist said uncertainly. Rowan turned his head just enough to acknowledge her, and it remained so, he said. "Please remain where you are," Marek exhaled sharply. "You have no authority to question me here," he said. "I am family." Rowan met his gaze fully now. "And she is a child," he replied. The words did not rise. They did not need to. Princess Alara's breathing changed again, slower now, though still tight. Her eyes followed the widening circle of people. The corridor was no longer empty. Witnesses gathered without invitation. Marek stepped back half a pace, adjusting his cuffs. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, projecting calm. "I spoke too quietly." She startled. Princess Alara flinched at the sound of his voice. Rowan noticed. He angled his body slightly, blocking her line of sight without isolating her from the room. "Princess," Rowan said calmly, "you may speak when ready." "Or not at all." Her lips parted. Closed again, then parted once more. "He says it when no one is listening," she whispered. The words carried. The archivists exchanged glances. The specialist swallowed hard. Someone farther down the corridor froze mid-step. Marek's jaw tightened. "You are upsetting her," he said sharply. "This ends now." He reached forward. Rowan intercepted the movement with a firm, controlled step. "No," he said. The corridor filled with the unmistakable sound of approaching guards. Boots moved with purpose. Radios murmured. The palace responded to its own alert. Captain Edrin Hale arrived moments later, posture rigid, eyes assessing. He took in the scene in one glance. Rowan between Merrick and the princess. Witnesses present. Tension visible. Report, the captain said quietly. Rowan answered without embellishment. I intervened after hearing a direct statement that placed the princess at risk, he said. Safeguarding protocol engaged? Captain Hale nodded once. Princess, he said gently, lowering his stance slightly. Are you safe right now? Lara hesitated, then nodded. Double quotes. Yes, she said. Here, Captain Hale turned to Marek. You will step away, he said. Now, Marek laughed, short and disbelieving. This is absurd, he replied. You are embarrassing the family. Captain Hale did not react. You will step away, he repeated, or this escalates. The corridor had grown crowded now. Staff stood frozen at respectful distances. No one spoke. No one intervened. Every eye watched. Marek glanced around. Realizing the moment had slipped beyond control, he stepped back. This is not over, he said. Rowan did not respond. Captain Hale gestured toward two arriving guards. Escort. Lord Merrick from the wing, he ordered. Do not leave him unattended. Marek opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. He adjusted his jacket and walked away under watch. His earlier confidence replaced by tight restraint as he disappeared around the corner. The preservation wing seemed to exhale. Princess Ailara's knees weakened. Rowan shifted instantly, grounding her without crowding, offering stability without pressure. She leaned back against the cabinet, eyes closed briefly. You did well, Rowan said softly. You spoke. She nodded. I did not want to, she admitted. Courage often arrives that way, Rowan replied. Captain Hale turned to the witnesses. This area is closed temporarily, he said. Please return to your duties. No one argued. As the corridor cleared, the preservation wing returned to quiet, though it no longer felt sealed. Something had escaped. Something irreversible, Captain Hale addressed Rowan again. You acted decisively, he said. There will be questions. Yes, Rowan replied. There will be pressure, Hale added. Yes, Rowan said again. Captain Hale studied him. Would you act differently, he asked. Rowan looked toward Princess Alara, now sitting carefully on a bench brought by the specialist. Wrapped in a light cover? No, Rowan replied. I would act sooner. Captain Hale nodded. He turned to Alara. You will be escorted to a secure space with advocates present, he said. You will not be alone. Alara looked at Rowan. Will you come? She asked. Rowan hesitated only long enough to check the captain's expression. Yes, Lay said before Rowan could speak. He will remain close. Relief softened Alara's shoulders as they moved down the corridor together. The walls that once absorbed whispers now carried memory. Staff who had witnessed the moment would remember. The palace would remember. A sentence spoken quietly had crossed a line. A guard had moved without permission, and the corridor that heard everything would never return to silence again. Silence tried to return to Ashburn Castle that afternoon. It moved carefully through corridors, settling back into place like dust disturbed by passing feet. Doors closed. Voices lowered. Schedules resumed. On the surface, the palace attempted to behave as if nothing had cracked inside. Everything had changed. Princess Alara sat in a secure receiving room near the eastern wing. Wrapped in a light shawl offered by an advocate, the room held soft chairs, tall windows, and no cameras. Two guards stood outside. Another waited farther down the corridor. Protection no longer pretended to be invisible. Sergeant Rowan Halberg remained nearby. Positioned just outside the open doorway, he stood straight, hands relaxed, eyes alert. He had already given a preliminary account to Captain Hale. He knew more questions would follow. They always did. An advocate knelt in front of Alara. Careful to keep distance. You may stop at any time, the advocate said gently. You decide what you share. Lara nodded. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers still tense but no longer shaking. "He says it softly," she began, "so no one hears. He says if I stay quiet, it will end faster." Rowan felt the words strike deeper than any shout. The advocate kept her voice calm. "How long has this been happening?" Lara looked toward the window. "Watching light shift across stone, long enough to learn how to stay still," she said. Outside the room, Captain Hale conferred with senior staff. A name had already moved upward through channels no one liked to acknowledge. It triggered caution, not disbelief. That worried him more than denial would have. "This must stay contained," one official said quietly. "Exposure damages stability," Hall answered evenly. "Concealment damages trust," the official frowned. "We are talking about influence. We're talking about safety," Hale replied. In another part of the palace, Lord Merrick Vale waited in a private chamber under watch. His posture remained composed, but his jaw stayed tight. He spoke of misunderstanding. He spoke of exaggeration. He spoke of loyalty to the family. He did not speak of the words he had whispered back in the receiving room. Alara's voice steadied as she continued. "He told me guards obey orders," she said. "He said no one would choose me." The advocate paused. "Someone did," she said. Alara nodded slowly. Rowan shifted his weight slightly, grounding himself. He knew that moment mattered. Not as validation, but as correction. By evening, Palace had begun to fracture into quiet camps. Some staff avoided the eastern wing entirely. Others lingered near it longer than necessary. Conversations paused when guards passed. The name moved again, now heavier, now unavoidable. A senior aide approached Rowan near the guard corridor. "You overstepped," the aide said quietly. "You understand how this looks?" Rowan met his gaze. "It looks like protection," he replied. The aide hesitated. "It looks like defiance," Rowan answered without raising his voice. "Defiance protects no one. Action does." The aide left without response. Later that night, Rowan was summoned to provide a full written statement. He sat at a small desk beneath a single lamp and wrote carefully. He documented posture, tone, distance. The exact sentence, spoken. He did not soften it. He did not dramatize it. Truth did not require emphasis. Princess. Alara was escorted to a private residence wing designed for rest, not isolation. An advocate remained with her. Guards rotated quietly. She slept with the window slightly open, breathing air that did not feel trapped. Rowan resumed duty outside the wing. Captain Hale joined him briefly. "They are attempting containment," Hale said. "No public notice. Internal handling, for now," Rowan replied. "Yes," Hale agreed. "For now." As midnight passed, a quiet meeting convened in the upper council chamber. Advisors debated language. Lawyers debated exposure. No one debated the words spoken in the preservation wing. Those words had already done their work. The next morning, the palace awoke to a different tension. Princess Alara walked briefly through a side corridor to meet the advocate again. She wore a simple jacket. No extra layers. No attempt to hide. A clerk noticed the way she walked more freely now. A footman noticed the guard presence. A visiting official noticed the closed doors near the preservation wing. Questions formed. Trying to return. But it could not hold against witnesses' records. And a child who no longer believed she had to disappear as the day progressed. Pressure arrived for Rowan, not as accusation, as suggestion. A transfer. A reassignment. A reminder of hierarchy. Captain Hale delivered the message carefully. "They want you away from the inner wings," he said. "Less visible," Rowan nodded. Visibility already occurred. Hal studied him. "You understand this may escalate." Rowan looked toward the secure wing. "Yes," he said. "It already has." Inside, Alara sat straighter as she spoke again with the advocate. Each sentence came easier than the last. Not because the memory softened, but because belief strengthened. The palace could not pretend any longer. Silence had failed. And once silence failed, everything built on it began to shift. Pressure arrived the next morning wearing his politeness. Sergeant Rowan Halberg reported for duty as usual. Boots aligned with the marble seam, posture exact. The castle looked unchanged. The flags hung still. The corridors echoed softly. Yet the order posted outside the guard office told a different story. Temporary reassignment. Outer rotation. Effective immediately, no explanation followed. Rowan read it once, then folded the notice and placed it inside his tunic pocket. He did not argue. He did not request clarification. He understood the language well enough. Distance was discipline. Visibility was risk. They wanted him away from Princess Lara. Rowan accepted the outer post near the South Arcade, a place with open air and long sightlines, but little relevance to inner affairs. From there, the palace looked calm, almost peaceful. The kind of calm that existed only when uncomfortable. Truths were moved elsewhere. Princess, Alara noticed within an hour. She walked the inner corridor with an advocate and slowed when she did not see Rowan near the eastern wing. Her eyes searched instinctively and stopped on the empty space where he usually stood. "He is not here," she said quietly. The advocate nodded. "He has been reassigned." Ilara's hands clenched. "Because of me," she said. "No," the advocate replied gently. "Because of what he did." That answer did not comfort her. She requested a meeting with Captain Hale immediately. The captain listened carefully as Ilara spoke, her voice calm but firm. "He protected me," she said. "Now you are moving him away." Hall chose his words with care. "Some believe his presence complicates matters." Ilara lifted her chin. "Silence complicated matters." The captain exhaled slowly. "You are right." Still the order stood. Rowan spent the morning at the outer post, eyes scanning the courtyard while his thoughts stayed inside the walls. He noticed everything, as always. The way messengers moved faster than usual. The way staff avoided certain corridors. The way conversations stopped when guards approached at midday. A senior official approached him beneath the archway. "You are drawing attention," the man said quietly. "I am standing where assigned," Rowan replied. "You understand what is at stake," the official continued. "Stability requires restraint." Rowan met his gaze. Restraint allowed harm. The official frowned. "You are a guard, not a judge." "I am protection," Rowan answered. "That does not require judgment. It requires response." The official walked away without reply. Inside the palace, pressure built around Princess Alara in quieter ways. Meetings postponed. Invitations delayed. Her schedule softened until it nearly disappeared. It looked like kindness. It felt like erasure. She refused it. "I will not disappear again," she told the advocate. That afternoon, Alara walked the gallery alone, escorted at distance. She stopped where sunlight spilled across the stone floor and waited. Staff noticed. So did Rowan. Watching from across the courtyard through an open archway, he recognized the posture. Waiting was a decision. Captain Hale joined Rowan moments later. "They are preparing a review," Hale said. "Of your conduct," Rohan nodded. "Expected. They may suspend you," Hal added. Quietly, Rowan did not react. Quiet rarely stays that way. As if summoned by the thought, a messenger arrived. "Sergeant Halberg," he said. "You are requested at the review chamber." The room was smaller than the council hall. No witnesses. No ceremony. 3 officers sat behind a narrow table. "You intervened without authorization," the chair said. "I intervened with cause," Rowan replied. "You challenged a protected individual," another officer added. "I shielded a child," Rowan answered. The chair leaned forward. "Would you act differently now?" Rowan paused. "Only long enough to choose honesty?" "No," he said. Silence followed, outside the chamber. Princess Alara waited with the advocate. When Rowan emerged, his expression unchanged. Alara searched his face. "They tried to stop you," she said. "They are trying," Rowan replied. "Will they succeed?" she asked. Rowan looked at her steadily. "Not if truth remains visible." Later that evening, the decision came. Suspension under consideration. Pending inquiry outcome, Rowan accepted the notice without comment. Princess Alara did not. She requested a formal statement be added to the inquiry record. "I speak in support of Sergeant Halberg," she said clearly. "He acted when others chose silence. If that is punished, then the message is clear." The statement circulated quietly at first, then faster staff read it. Guards shared it. Advocates referenced it. The attempt to isolate Rowan began to fail under the weight of visibility. By nightfall, suspension paused. Not lifted, paused. Rowan returned to duty, reassigned again, this time near the inner courtyard. Not beside Alara, close enough to be seen. Princess Alara passed him once. Meeting his eyes briefly, they did not speak. They did not need to. The palace had tried to stop the guard. It had not succeeded because pressure worked best in silence, and silence no longer belonged to the palace alone. The inquiry reached its breaking point on a morning that began like any other. Ashburn Castle woke beneath pale light and careful routine. Servants moved through corridors with trained quiet. Guards changed shifts. Schedules resumed their familiar shape. On the surface, order remained intact. Underneath, pressure pressed hard enough to crack stone. Princess Alara stood in the antechamber outside the high review hall. Hands folded, posture straight. She wore a simple blue coat, unfastened despite the chill. She had chosen it deliberately. No layers to hide behind. No symbols to speak for her. Sergeant Rowan Halberg stood inside the hall, positioned near the eastern wall, visible to everyone who entered. The reassignment had been deliberate. He was not placed beside the princess. He was placed where authority could not ignore him. The review council assembled in silence. Chancellor Varin presided, flanked by senior advisors, legal overseers, and safeguarding advocates. The air carried gravity rather than ceremony. This was not a performance. This was consequence. Lord Merrick Vale entered last. His confidence remained practiced, but something had shifted. He scanned the room quickly, noting positions, noting witnesses, noting Rowan. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Chancellor?" Varin opened the session. "This inquiry addresses safeguarding failure, misuse of authority, and institutional response," he said. "We proceed with clarity. Evidence." Followed, Rowan's written account appeared. First, precise, factual, undeniable. The exact words spoken in the preservation. Wing displayed on record without commentary. It will not hurt if you stay quiet. No interpretation followed. None was needed. Advocates presented behavioral analysis. Staff testimonies followed, cautious at first, then firmer. Patterns emerged. Avoidance. Quiet corridors. Moments when supervision thinned at the wrong times. Princess Alara was invited to speak. She stood without hesitation. "I will speak once," she said calmly. She faced the council. "Not Marek. I learned early that silence kept adults comfortable," she said. "I stayed quiet because I was told it protected everyone." Her voice did not waver. "It protected no one," she continued. "It only protected what should have been stopped." The room remained still. Chancellor Varin nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said. "That will be sufficient." Marek rose immediately. "This narrative exaggerates," he said. "Discipline becomes distortion when fear intervenes." Princess Alara turned toward him. "You told me pain ended faster if I stayed quiet," she said. "That is not discipline." Marek opened his mouth, then closed it. The council withdrew for deliberation. Time stretched outside the hall. Staff gathered at respectful distances. Conversation stayed low, but urgent. Guards shifted positions without being told. The castle felt as if it held its breath. Rowan remained at attention. Captain Hale approached him quietly. "This will not end quietly," Hale said. Rowan nodded. "It should not." When the council returned, the atmosphere had changed. Chancellor Varin stood. "The inquiry concludes that harm occurred under misuse of proximity and authority," declared. "Safeguarding obligations were violated." Marek stiffened. "All access and privileges for Lord Marek Vale are revoked effective immediately," Varin continued. "Further proceedings transfer to civil authority." A murmur moved through the room, and regarding institutional responsibility, Baron said, "New oversight measures take effect today. Independent advocates gain authority across all restricted wings. Reporting protections expand. Retaliation will not be tolerated." Eyes turned toward Rowan. "Sergeant Halberg acted within duty of care," Baron said. "No disciplinary action will follow. His service record remains intact." Rowan inclined his head once. "Nothing more." Princess Alara exhaled slowly. "Not relief alone. Release." Marak attempted to speak again. Baron raised a hand. "This session has concluded," he said, as the hall emptied. Alara paused near Rowan. "They listened," she said. "They could not avoid it," Rowan replied. Outside, a controlled statement circulated through the palace and beyond. It acknowledged safeguarding failures and confirmed immediate reforms. No excuses. No minishada. The castle responded quietly, not with celebration, with acceptance. That evening, Lara walked through the eastern gallery again, accompanied at distance. She paused near the place where silence had first failed and stood, without fear. Rowan resumed his post beneath the archway. Posture exact, presence steady, power had faced truth. And for the first time, it had not turned away. Only one chapter remained. Not of confrontation, but of what followed when protection no longer waited for permission. Healing did not arrive with applause or ceremony. It arrived in quiet corrections. In doors that stayed open, in voices that asked before instructing. Ashburn Castle remained grand, its stone walls unchanged, yet the way people moved within them softened. Awareness replaced assumption. Listening replaced command. Princess Alara woke to morning light that no longer felt sharp. Sun filtered through tall windows and rested gently across the floor. She sat up without flinching, breathing slow and steady. The silence in the room felt safe now, not heavy. An advocate waited outside not to escort, but to check. "How do you feel today?" she asked. Lyra considered the question carefully. "Present," she replied. She chose the gardens again. Outside, dew clung to hedges, and the scent of earth lingered in the air. Alara walked along the gravel path with unhurried steps, sleeves loose, arms uncovered. The marks on her skin had faded to soft shadows, reminders rather than wounds. She touched a leaf, grounding herself in the moment. Sergeant Rowan Halberg stood at a respectful distance. His role had changed. Not through promotion, but through purpose. He now trained guards assigned to sensitive postings, teaching them to observe before acting. "Protection does not begin with authority," he told them. "It begins with attention." Lessons spread quietly. Guards asked more questions. Staff hesitated less when something felt wrong. Reporting became expectation rather than risk. That afternoon, Lara asked to speak with Rowan privately. They met near the eastern courtyard fountain, the place where so much had shifted. Water moved steadily over stone, unbothered by memory. "I wanted to thank you," Alara said. Rowan inclined his head. "You chose to speak." "I spoke because someone noticed," she replied. She handed him a small folded note. Inside, written carefully, were simple words. "You moved when others waited." Rowan folded the note and placed it inside his tunic pocket. Not as sentiment. As a reminder, inside the castle, reforms continued without pause. Oversight councils met weekly. Advocates held authority without interference. Restricted wings adopted transparent access rules. Training focused on safeguarding rather than silence. The culture shifted not through decree, but repetition. Lord Marekvale did not return. His name remained in records, not whispers. The castle did not frame consequence as victory. It framed it as responsibility. Leia returned to her studies gradually. Tutors adjusted pace. Lessons paused when needed. She drew again, filling pages with open spaces, light and figures standing upright instead of shrinking. Laughter returned, first cautious, then freer. One evening, she addressed a small gathering in the library. I speak as myself, she said, not as a symbol. Her voice carried calm strength. I learned that silence protects harm, she continued, and that protection should never require courage from a child. Those present listened without interruption. On the anniversary of the day, Rowan stepped forward. A small plaque appeared near the preservation wing. No names. No ceremony, it read. Protection does not wait for permission. Ilara stood before it quietly, hands relaxed at her sides. She did not feel exposed. She felt steady. Rowan stood nearby, posture exact, eyes calm. A young guard approached him later that day. Sir, the guard said, I noticed something today. I asked before it became worse. Rowan nodded. That is how it works. As night settled, the castle lights dimmed gently. Corridors no longer felt heavy with unspoken things. They felt open. Ilara returned to her chamber and opened the window. Cool air flowed in, carrying distant city sounds. She breathed deeply and smiled, not because everything had healed, but because healing no longer felt impossible below. Rowan resumed his watch beneath the archway, stone solid beneath his boots, purpose clear in his stance. The castle still stood. What changed was what it protected. And because one guard moved without waiting, and one child spoke without fear, protection inside those walls would never again depend on silence.